Did you know that in the state of New Jersey, it is forbidden to slurp when eating soup? And in Wisconsin, you cannot serve apple pie without cheese? Today we will look at 50 of the strangest and most ridiculous food laws. Some of them are still in effect, others are just amusing relics of the past. Grab a light snack and let's start exploring these rules. The first rule: in Gainesville, Georgia, considered the world capital of poultry farming, it is forbidden to eat fried chicken with anything other than your hands. In the United Kingdom, the 1986 law prohibits handling salmon in suspicious circumstances. This is undoubtedly the most British law of all. So what does suspicious circumstances mean for salmon? Maybe when it tries to pay for shopping? This law raises many questions and brings a smile to many. The law forbids selling salmon in hats and masks. It was enacted to combat poaching and illegal fish sales. The wording sounds very funny. One imagines a scene in a dark alley where someone opens a trench coat not with a watch, but with a shiny, illegal salmon inside. In Columbus, Georgia, it is forbidden to sell peanuts within the city limits after sunset on Wednesdays. This law seems very strange. This act is probably related to the regulation of street markets and the ban on late street vendors. The wording is very precise and seems personal. It appears as if one day an official was awakened by the sale of boiled peanuts at 11 in the evening. And he decided, enough. This amusing petty food law still surprises many. It seems like a reflection of a small town's history. In France, in 2011, a law was passed strictly limiting the use of ketchup in school cafeterias. The purpose of the law was to preserve traditional French cuisine and encourage healthy eating among children. Students are allowed to use ketchup only with one dish: French fries, which are served only once. Maintaining culinary purity for a week means protecting the national taste from the horrors of sweet tomato sauce, unless it is on fried potatoes. The logic here is purely French. In Wisconsin, a piece of apple pie in a restaurant must legally be served with a slice of cheese. This is not just a recommendation, but once was a state law. Currently, the law is not strictly enforced with fines, but the cultural expectation is such that serving pie without cheese is considered almost an act of defiance. This is evidence of the strength of the state's dairy lobby, which convinced that there is nothing better for an apple than an apple with the best cheddar in Wisconsin. Continuing about Wisconsin, the state once literally waged a war over butter, and the legal traces of this remain to this day. For many years, it was illegal to serve colored margarine in restaurants instead of butter, unless the customer specifically requested it. This is the result of powerful lobbying by the dairy industry during the so-called Oleo Wars. Some states even required all margarine to be colored a humiliating pink to avoid confusion with butter. Wisconsin was the last state to repeal the ban on colored margarine in 1967. It was a brutal high-cholesterol conflict for the soul of the American toast. In Maryland, it is forbidden to mistreat oysters. The law is very vague and does not specify what exactly counts as mistreatment of an oyster. Can insulting an oyster shell be considered a crime? Serving it without lemon? Saying that its cousin, the mollusk, is more interesting? Questions without answers. The rule is most likely related to the regulation of harvesting and handling, but the wording makes the law a masterpiece. Be polite to oysters in Baltimore. You never know who is listening. In one city in New Jersey, it is forbidden to drink soup loudly. The sound of enjoying hot soup is considered punishable. This is a bold legislative step against audible pleasure, most likely made by someone who did not like family dinners, solving a problem that no one had. In Boston, it is strictly forbidden to add tomatoes to the traditional New England clam chowder recipe. This is considered a crime under Massachusetts law. Violation of this law is punishable by confiscation of all clams in the possession of the offender. This ban arose from strong regional pride and dislike of tomato soup. In Massachusetts, adding tomato to clam chowder is considered not just a mistake, but a true culinary crime that violates tradition. In the famous and prosperous city of Caramel by the Sea in California, it has been forbidden for many years to eat ice cream while standing on a public sidewalk. This law was introduced to prevent tourists from dripping ice cream on sidewalks and creating a mess, which irritated the residents. The law became so well known that in 1986, when actor Clint Eastwood became mayor, he was one of the first to repeal this ban. He declared that ice cream cones were now safe again, symbolizing a change in the city's attitude towards aesthetics and minor details in public life. The city was so concerned about appearances that even a dripping mint chocolate ice cream scoop was considered a public threat and a reason for prohibition. In the state of Oklahoma, there is a law that considers it a crime to take a bite out of someone else's hamburger without permission. This unusual law reflects respect for personal property and prevents conflicts over food in public places. This law is not about politeness or the desire to share. It protects the sanctity of a personal burger, making it inviolable to others. Although this law falls under general rules about damaging someone else's property, its specificity is what makes it legendary and amusing. This is the best legal argument against a friend who always asks, "Can I take a bite?" and opens their mouth like a python before food. In Oklahoma, you have the right to say no to such a friend, and the law will be on your side, fully protecting your personal burger. Welcome to Marion, Ohio, where it is forbidden to eat a donut while walking backwards. This law seems strange and illogical. There are no historical records explaining how and why this ban related to eating donuts and moving backwards came about. Perhaps people started walking backwards and getting hit by cars while eating donuts, but the exact reason remains a mystery. If you find yourself in Marion with a Boston cream donut, remember, move only forward. It's not just advice, it's the law. Singapore is famous for its cleanliness, largely due to the ban on the sale and import of chewing gum, one of the most well-known food bans. This ban became part of efforts to maintain cleanliness and order in the city-state, eliciting mixed reactions from the population. The ban on chewing gum was introduced in 1992 after vandals began sticking used gum to the door sensors of new trains. This caused constant disruptions in the operation of the transport system. The government did not hesitate and completely banned chewing gum. Later, the rules were slightly relaxed, allowing chewing gum to be used only for therapeutic or dental purposes, purchased from a pharmacist. However, gum for entertainment remains prohibited. The peace and quiet of cold snack lovers after 9 in the evening became a priority for the city. This law emphasizes the importance of public order and comfort at night. Gentlemen, take note. An old city ordinance in Pocatello, Idaho, prohibited giving your beloved a box of chocolates weighing less than 50 pounds. This unusual law highlighted generosity and the significance of gifts, but nowadays it is no longer enforced and is seen more as a curiosity of the past. It is almost certainly part of local folklore that is no longer observed, but reflects the philosophy of go big or go home. It was not just about a romantic gesture. It was about confirming the level of devotion, measured by a weight that could induce diabetic coma. A dozen roses is nice, but a quarter ton of chocolate is forever. In France, it was illegal for a long time to call a pig Napoleon. This law arose from deep respect for Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. The law protected the dignity of the emperor, unwilling to associate his name with an animal. Despite the repeal of the law, it stood for over a century as a strange, legal barrier. This is an excellent example of national pride permeating unexpected spheres of life, including agriculture and domestic animals. In Iowa, butter is taken very seriously. The state law explicitly prohibits passing off margarine as real butter. In the text of the law, any butter substitute is called fake butter, which sounds less like a food product and more like counterfeit currency. The law required any establishment selling butter substitutes to prominently display a sign reading, "We serve imitation butter," in large, bold letters. This is a clear message. In Iowa, there is real butter, and then there is culinary crime. Some states encourage healthy habits, but Utah went even further. In Utah, there is a law requiring any public establishment or institution to keep milk in stock during an emergency. This is part of readiness regulations. If a crisis occurs in Utah, along with flashlights and first aid kits, there will definitely be a supply of milk. This approach to apocalypse survival is considered useful and proper. The city of Mobile, Alabama, is famous for its vibrant Mardi Gras celebrations, which predate those of New Orleans. But there are strict rules. In Mobile, it is prohibited to sell or use confetti. Also banned is the silly string. The goal is to make cleanup easier after mass events. Despite the bans, in the city known for one of America's largest celebrations, a certain irony remains. In Pennsylvania, some drink combinations are considered not only an insult to taste, but also a violation of the law. There is an old and little-known law prohibiting mixing beer with milk. No one knows exactly who could have ordered this terrible drink, but lawmakers decided to ban its existence in advance. This law protects people from their worst culinary impulses. In Washington state, the law strictly prohibits accidentally picking fruit from someone else's trees. This act is legally referred to as fruit theft. The law is aimed at protecting large commercial orchards from poachers. Even if you really want to pick a cherry, it can make you a real fruit thief. Have you ever wondered where the term 13th bun came from? The origin of the baker's dozen comes from medieval English law designed to scare bakers into honesty by punishing those selling underweight bread loaves severely. The law set strict rules on the size of bread and ale, imposing harsh punishments for selling underweight loaves, including fines, flogging, or the pillory. To avoid these brutal penalties, bakers added an extra loaf for every dozen sold, making 13 loaves a legal insurance against severe medieval justice. The 13th loaf was not an act of generosity, but a strategic, legal protection to prevent harsh punishment under medieval law. Thinking about pranking a friend in New Orleans with pizza delivery? You should reconsider, as it is against the law there to deliver pizza without the recipient's knowledge. This specific ordinance targets practical jokes that leave people with surprise bills and unwanted pepperoni pizzas they never ordered. The law clearly states, "That's not funny. Just pay for your own dinner," discouraging pranksters from causing inconvenience. Kansas and Wisconsin are in an undeclared dessert war, with Wisconsin requiring cheese on apple pie, while Kansas forbids it by law in Topeka. In Wisconsin, cheese on apple pie is a tradition mandated by law, whereas Topeka, Kansas, prohibits adding cheese to this dessert. This unusual culinary conflict highlights regional food laws that influence local dessert customs and spark lighthearted rivalry between states. Put a scoop of ice cream on a slice of cherry pie. There is no clear historical reason for this ban, just a pure, simple, and quite mysterious rule. As if the founders of Topeka gathered and decided that cherry pie was allowed, but combining it with ice cream was too joyful and forbidden. In Japan, the law on fugu fish is a masterclass in culinary horror. This fish contains a neurotoxin that is deadly if prepared incorrectly. Therefore, it is forbidden to prepare and serve fugu without a special government license. To obtain it, one must undergo many years of study and exams. In the final exam, the chef must prepare a dish from fugu and eat it themselves. This is the most risky exam in the culinary world. Passing means surviving and gaining the right to professionally prepare fugu. It is a life and death exam. In the state of Maine, it is illegal to place advertisements on tombstones, even if it is food advertising. Previously, marketers tried to use cemeteries for advertising. There were attempts to place ads for soda and candy on graves, but such campaigns were considered tasteless and were quickly banned. The state legislature has banned commercial advertising on tombstones. Now, cemeteries are free from intrusive ads, even if you have an eternal craving for sweets. In the United States, since 2017, one of the most famous national Scottish dishes, haggis, has been banned. The import of real haggis is prohibited. The reason for the ban is the key ingredient of haggis, sheep lungs. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has deemed animal lungs unfit for consumption. This has created a permanent culinary barrier. Scottish immigrants and food enthusiasts in America have to settle for versions without lungs. In the state of Tennessee, there is a law prohibiting the sale and even the storage for sale of hollow logs. This seems like a strange ban. In fact, the law was aimed against bootleggers of the Prohibition era who used hollow logs to transport illegal alcohol. The law was not against the logs themselves, but was a clever way to combat illegal alcohol trade. One of the main tricks of secrecy is Canada's special attitude towards breakfast. It is forbidden to sell margarine without vitamins A and D, and it must be a certain shade of yellow. The same rule applies to milk. This is not a recommendation but a law. The government decided that these products in their natural form are not nutritious enough for Canadians. This approach to public health can be called paternalistic. A butter substitute is required by law to contain vitamins. This is an example of government control over nutrition. In colonial Connecticut, there was a center for spice counterfeiting. Traders became known for making fake nutmeg from carved wood. The phrase wooden nutmeg became synonymous with deception. The problem was so widespread that Connecticut passed a law banning the sale of fake nutmeg. This is one of the earliest examples of consumer protection legislation in America. All because people couldn't stop carving fake spices. Now let's talk about the most dangerous cheese in the world. On the island of Sardinia in Italy, there is a traditional sheep's milk cheese called casu marzu. Its peculiarity is the intentional infestation with live insects. These larvae make the cheese unusual and at the same time dangerous to consume. This cheese is considered a delicacy, but due to the risk of infection, it is banned in many countries. It is a unique example of traditional cuisine in danger in one product. Despite the bans, casu marzu remains popular among enthusiasts of exotic food and Sardinian traditions. It is a cheese with history and character. The larvae of these flies digest the fats in the cheese, fermenting it to an almost liquid state. This cheese is considered a delicacy despite health risks. Due to the danger that the larvae may survive in the intestine, the sale of this cheese is prohibited under European Union hygiene regulations. This cheese has become a black market commodity and can only be found through acquaintances who know where to get it. In New York, old laws live long. One of them prohibits walking on Sunday with an ice cream cone in your pocket. This law seems like a joke, but it originated from attempts to circumvent rules banning the purchase of certain items on Sundays. If the ice cream was already in the pocket, it could be claimed that it was not bought that day. A strange legal loophole. Lawmakers found this ridiculous and took measures to close this strange loophole in the law. In China, food truck operators need to carefully choose their location, as strict bans apply in major cities. Within 100 meters of a primary or middle school, there is a law aimed at improving student nutrition. This law is created with good intentions and establishes an invisible government zone free of fried food around schools nationwide. Australia once declared war on birds and lost. In 1932, a huge flock of emus was destroying wheat fields in Western Australia. The government sent the army, armed with machine guns, to solve the problem. This event went down in history as the Great Emu War. However, the birds proved fast and resilient, almost impossible targets. After several weeks of failure, the army was forced to retreat. The emus won this war. After that, a system of rewards and fences was introduced, which proved to be more effective and less humiliating. In Germany, beer purity is not a matter of taste, but a national law. The beer purity law, Reinheitsgebot, originated in Bavaria in 1516. This law is considered one of the oldest food quality regulations in the world and sets strict standards for brewing. In Germany, there is a law that requires using only water, barley, and hops for beer production. Yeast was added later when it was discovered. Despite modern changes, the spirit of the law has been preserved, ensuring that German beer meets a standard over 500 years old. In Texas, there is a law that seems to have been written by a disgruntled child. It is forbidden to serve cheese called Limburger on Sundays. This very pungent cheese was considered too strong a smell for the Lord's Day. The law is a relic of a more devout and smell-sensitive time. The idea that a specific cheese can be considered too offensive a smell for one day of the week is an example of legislative excess. In the town of Hayden, New Jersey, romance is strictly regulated by law. An old law forbids approaching a person of the opposite sex with an offer of a cucumber. Yes, exactly, with a cucumber. This outdated law probably arose from a forgotten local incident
and remains a monument to strange specificity.
Flowers can be offered, but a cucumber is not allowed, which highlights the absurdity and uniqueness of this local ban. Chocolate is wonderful, but in Hayden, a cucumber is considered a forbidden courting tool. This place has unusual traditions that surprise many guests and tourists. In Scotland, your dinner can have national security significance. The 1457 law prohibits refusing the king's request to use your home for storing provisions. This law was part of a series of measures to supply the Scottish army with food in case of an English invasion. The military had to be always ready to defend the country.
If the king knocks on your door and asks to store provisions in the pantry, you are legally obliged to agree and help the country's army. In the state of Oregon, it is prohibited to refuel your car by yourself. This even applies to buying snacks. Self-service at gas stations is strictly forbidden by law.
This strange law was created to generate jobs and prevent accidents at gas stations. Therefore, all refueling and purchases are done only with the help of employees.
If you are traveling to Oregon, remember, even if you want to buy chips and soda, an employee must serve you, not yourself.
Be careful in Louisiana, especially if you are a crayfish. The state has a law protecting these crustaceans and their habitats. The law aims to preserve the crayfish population and their habitat, which is important for the ecology and traditional lifestyle of the region. Violation of this law can lead to fines and other penalties, highlighting the seriousness of nature conservation in the state. In Louisiana, crabs are so loved that stealing them from a farm or trap is considered a crime. This act is called crawfish theft, and it carries heavy fines and prison time. Crawfish in Louisiana are not just food. They are the foundation of the region's culture and economy. Violating someone's crawfish catch is a very serious offense.
Want to order pizza delivered by drones? Hold on. In the USA, the Federal Aviation Administration strictly regulates the commercial use of drones, including food delivery.
Getting a certificate for commercial drone operation is a complex and expensive process. So for now, companies are only experimenting, and the dream of pizza from the sky is postponed. Technology develops faster than bureaucracy. The future has already arrived. It is just waiting for the proper paperwork and permits.
In Sweden, it is forbidden to give dishes in restaurants names that mislead customers. The Food Control Agency strictly monitors this.
In one well-known case, a chef was fined for giving a dish a false name on the menu. A vegan burger was labeled as a beef burger in quotation marks, claiming it was irony. The court disagreed, deciding that visitors should not be misled. The court ruled that visitors should not be confused or misled about what is on their plate. This is a serious approach to honesty on the menu. In Chicago, it is prohibited to serve alcohol if the kitchen is closed. This law was created to prevent nighttime drinking without food.
Although it sounds reasonable, the law has led to absurd scenes. Bartenders at 1 o'clock in the morning heat up frozen pizza to continue legally pouring drinks.
In Chicago, along with a stack of whiskey, you are sure to be served something edible as a garnish. A portion of food is a mandatory condition for selling alcohol.
The phrase, "There is no such thing as a free lunch," did not arise simply as economic wisdom, but from real laws of that time. In the 19th century, American saloons offered free meals to visitors, but with one condition: the food was incredibly salty. Salted ham, crackers, and cheese
were made to induce strong thirst and make visitors buy more high-profit beer.
With the rise of the temperance movement, many states passed laws against free lunches, prohibiting the distribution of food in places selling alcohol.
These laws aimed to combat the practice of free meals that encouraged excessive alcohol consumption in saloons. For nearly 80 years, singing the Happy Birthday song in public without payment was against the law. The copyright belonged to the publisher Warner Chappell.
The publisher collected millions in royalties. Restaurants invented their own unusual birthday songs to avoid paying licensing fees.
In 2015, a federal judge overturned the copyright after a long class action lawsuit. Happy Birthday became part of the public domain. What is chocolate? According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the requirements for milk chocolate are very specific.
For a product to be called milk chocolate, it must contain at least 10% chocolate mass and 12% milk solids.
If these strict standards are not met, the product cannot be called chocolate. Therefore, there are products with a chocolate coating or flavor.
This is not a marketing move, but a legal restriction. A ban on the use of the word chocolate when requirements are not met.
In the mid-20th century, American shoe stores introduced a device called a fluoroscope, an apparatus for X-ray examination of the foot.
The fluoroscope allowed customers to see the structure of their foot and choose the most suitable shoes for comfort and health.
Previously, shoe stores could show how X-rays illuminated the bones of your feet in new shoes. It was a real spectacle in retail. However, after the risks of radiation exposure became known, many states banned this practice. In Nevada, the law prohibits the use of X-rays. The state prohibits the use of any X-ray, fluoroscopic, or other radiation-producing equipment for shoe fitting. This is a relic of the past. In France, dogs are not just pets, but full companions at the table. The law is very lenient regarding the presence of dogs in restaurants.
Unlike many parts of the USA, dogs in French restaurants can sit on their chairs next to their owners. This is socially acceptable and legal.
Sanitary regulations are written to allow the presence of dogs, relying on the responsibility of the owners. For American tourists, this is a surprising and beautiful sight. In Houston, Texas, there is a city law prohibiting the sale of soft cheese on Sundays. This is a feature of local legislation.
It may seem like we've already discussed this Texas law, but in fact, it is a separate rule that applies only in Houston. In Houston, there is a separate law with an unusual rule prohibiting the sale of rice on the same day. This combination causes surprise and bewilderment among the city's residents. It seems the city council deliberately chose two completely unrelated products and banned their sale on a certain day of the week. The reasons for this decision are forever lost in history. In the end, we face a completely confusing law that remains a mystery to everyone trying to understand the logic of local legislation. We have overcome 49 levels of legislative madness, and only one great finale remains. But before that, it's time to deliver the final verdict. In our opinion, the prize for the most absurd law on today's list goes to the British ban on suspicious handling of salmon.
The law conjures up the image of a film noir-style detective interrogating a fish in a trench coat and hat. Do you agree with our verdict, or do you think another law deserves the crown of absurdity? Write your choice in the comments under the video.
And now our grand finale, number 50. This is not a separate law, but a government code that will change your perception of any food.
We are talking about the rules of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which affect every meal in the country. There is an official publication called the Food Defect Levels Handbook. It specifies the maximum allowable amounts of contaminants in food. This document describes natural or unavoidable defects that do not pose a health risk. For example, up to 60 insect fragments per 100 grams of chocolate. The handbook also permits the presence of 2 larvae in a 500-gram can of tomato juice, as well as 1 rodent hair per 100 grams of peanut butter. The government understands that food is never perfectly clean. They created a table to determine how dirty it can legally be. These rules are a kind of societal footnote, written either by brilliant people or bored ones, or those who had a particular grudge against a neighbor for eating donuts. What is the most incredible rule you know, even if it is not related to food? Share your opinion.
If you enjoyed this journey into the world of absurd legislation, subscribe and click the bell, because the search for the strangest realities in the world continues.